Things are about to get complicated.
Tuesday upload, Tuesday upload, Tuesday upload.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long time coming, but honestly, I've been putting this off for way too long than I should have been. So, yeah, I think it's right about time that I just sit down and explain everything. What is the AaronDoesArt creative universe? Now, I'm not going to make this intro super long because I already know this is going to be a really long video as it is, but I do want to say that the AaronDoesArt creative universe, the name, does not actually come from my brain. That comes from the genius of Whiteford McGuire, the legendary Whiteford McGuire, which honestly, you should just be expecting genius like that from her all the time. I recommend checking out her channel. She's really good at what she does, and yeah, I will say this kind of universe that I've created is heavily based off of a universe that my friend Lane, who is Pancake Studios, formerly Pancake Extreme, he and I came up with a universe when we were in probably 5th grade, probably about like, you know, I don't really know how old, probably like 9, but we came up with a universe, and this universe is pretty heavily based on that. But with that, let's just go ahead and get into it, and we'll start off with some definitions. So when I say definitions, basically I mean just some terms that will make this sort of understanding a few things in this universe a little bit easier. But really, these are just sort of arbitrary things that don't really make too much of a difference, but they still, I feel like, are pretty important. So we're going to start off with classifications of beings. There are 4 classifications of beings in this universe. Beings meaning anything with life, so plants, animals, humans, and anything above humans, or basically anything that lives and is able to have the term life applied to it. So we're going to start off with the lowest level of classification, which is substandard. And substandard beings are basically anything that is alive, but not what's called sentient. And so that basically means anything that doesn't really have a sense of self-awareness. So like, you know, pretty much any animal, tree, plant, basically what the meaning of sentient just essentially means, you know, like humans are considered sentient. We have a sense of self-awareness, we have a sense of purpose, stuff like that. So yeah, pretty much anything below human level intelligence is considered substandard. Then we have standard, which is standard beings are sentient beings such as humans. Humans are a very good example. And these beings are capable of having superhuman abilities. So pretty much any superhuman that you're going to hear about, anybody that started off as human or relatively close to human sort of base, I guess, that has superhuman abilities or superpowers, essentially, is going to be considered a standard being. And then we have subcosmics. Now, subcosmic beings are those that exist outside of any particular solar system or planet. They don't really have a home per se. And subcosmic beings are able to travel at speeds previously unfathomable by humans, essentially meaning that they can travel very close to the speed of light, but not quite. And that just lets them travel very quickly throughout the cosmos. And many subcosmic beings are able to transport themselves and sometimes others to different parts of the universe via portals. It just depends on kind of what kind of subcosmic being we're talking about. And the only subcosmic being that you need to worry about for this is Plasma, and we'll get into him a little bit later. But yeah, he's the only one you're going to need to worry about here. And then cosmic beings are able to effortlessly transport themselves throughout the cosmos and are the most diverse in power. Cosmic beings are nearly unkillable and basically, I guess you could say demigods. I don't use that term, but they're basically extremely powerful. They're the rarest ones though, and there's only one cosmic being in this universe ever known in universal history, and that will be the Dark Lord. You'll hear about him later. And okay, so now that we've gotten the classifications out of the way, there are two bases you need to worry about in this universe. There's energy-based and power-based, and energy-based beings are the most common. Humans are a good example of energy-based beings. Energy-based beings basically mean any creature or animal, whatever, any of the four classifications of beings that rely on outside sources for their energy and for their ability to exist, basically. So humans obviously need food and water. Plasma, who is a subcosmic being, he relies on energy from stars and just whatever energy he can get his hands on. And so yeah, they're able to regenerate that energy very quickly as long as they have access to whatever they need to regenerate that energy. But in expense of that, they also have a limit to how powerful they can become, essentially. And then you have power-based beings. Power-based beings are significantly more rare and significantly more powerful than energy-based beings. Power-based beings gain power by conquering other planets, solar systems, galaxies, etc., etc. And basically what that means is that the more area or the more life they have control over, the more powerful they become. So they do need to exterminate things in order to gain their own gain power for themselves. So they tend to be very, very power hungry and very, very violent. But they don't really have much of a danger to the universe as a whole because they're so rare. But they can perform much more strenuous tasks with relative ease. The Dark Lord, who is a power-based being, is able to lift 35 tons pretty effortlessly, and that's only at half strength. And but with power-based beings, they are able to regenerate their energy without any sort of outside source, just given enough time to do so. So essentially, it's if they want to be passive about gaining their energy back, or if they're forced to be passive about gaining their energy back, they just need to wait it out, basically. But that can take hundreds of thousands of years to regain all of their energy back. But yeah, that's the only passive way for them to actually do so. So yeah, there's that. So that's the definitions out of the way. And hopefully that might have cleared some stuff up and kind of gives you some things to go off of when we get into the rest of the story. But without further ado, let's get into some character descriptions. Alright, so for your character descriptions, there's going to be 10 primary characters that have made appearances in the actual storyline, which we'll get to in a minute, so far. And so for these characters, these are all made-up characters. Some of them are based on people that I actually know in real life, but they're pretty much completely from my head, especially the names. I didn't base the names off of anybody except for Matchstick. His name is Aaron Carter, but my last name's not Carter, so don't worry about that. But yeah, so Matchstick's the only one whose name is actually based off of anybody that I actually know. But yeah, with that, let's just go ahead and get into the character description, starting with Aaron Carter. So he is 18 years old at the ending of the storyline that I'll get to in a minute. And he is 5 feet 11 inches tall. I don't know off the top of my head what that is in meters, but as far as powers go, he has super strength up to 1.5 tons, and 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. For anybody that's doesn't know how much that is, and again, I don't know what that is in kilograms, so forgive me for that. but he has pyrokinesis, meaning he can light his skin on fire, blast it around. Basically, if you've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's kind of like a firebender, but he's able to survive in low oxygen environments due to his lungs being significantly smaller, which also aids in his super strength because he's taking in proportionately more oxygen. And so that also means he's very hard to choke to death. So if somebody's got him by the throat, holding him off the ground, doesn't really affect him that much. And he's also got superhuman durability and specifically very, very, very hard to break bones. So for his actual description, his family was killed in a bombing on his 10th birthday. The bomb activated his previously dormant superpowers. The genetic condition that he has is most identifiable by the color of your eyes. It actually turns your eyes orange, but otherwise it changes nothing about your physiology until upon contact with an open flame. So his superpowers were previously dormant until he was until somebody attempted to kill him with a bomb. So his entire family was killed, and he was left psychologically scarred from the experience, being the only survivor. And he ended up terrified of his own powers because he ended up with a very, very severe pyrophobia, which is the fear of fire. And so he was absolutely terrified whenever his powers that he could barely control at this time would activate, just not on command. So he was placed in an orphanage eventually. He was the only one that survived the bombing, as I said, and he survived with just a few minor scratches, no broken bones, no burns, nothing like that, obviously because of his superpowers. And he was bullied to the breaking point by another child who was a little bit older in that orphanage. And so he was very, very psychologically weak at that point. So he eventually left the orphanage and began working on his own. And later in his life, he was able to overcome his pyrophobia with the help of Rebecca Davis, who we'll get to in a second, a girl he met in confrontation with a genocidal alien that had been responsible for the death of his family. So Rebecca Davis and Aaron Carter began dating, and Rebecca helped Aaron through his fears. Although he still struggles with occasional bouts of depression, anxiety, his mental state has significantly improved, and in combat he is very, very quippy, almost like Spider-Man style, and unless it's extremely serious, he just jokes around a lot, which I honestly prefer more than just being completely serious in a fight. But he does have occasional panic attacks due to traumatic memories. So if something that caused him mental trauma is brought up, then he'll have a panic attack in response to that. But occasionally, he wraps his left hand and left knee before an engagement. If he is able to, if he knows it's coming, then he'll wrap his left hand and left knee, because he had some permanent damage to those parts of his body in a fight that we'll get to in a minute. So that's it for Aaron Carter, or Matchstick. He's kind of the focal point of my universe, and he's not really based on me. He does, obviously our names are the same, our first names are the same at least, and but he's not really based on me. But obviously I don't have any of the psychological issues that he has, and especially not any of the sort of orphan issues that he has. But I don't know, I figured it would make for a pretty good superhero story. So yeah, there's that. So next up we have Rebecca Davis, also known as Phoenix. She is 17 years old, 5'7", and her powers are pretty much the exact same as Matchstick's, except for she can, let's see, I have it written down. If you're wondering why I'm looking over to this side, I have it written down on my computer and I'm reading it off of there. But she is able to teleport, and her teleportation was actually something she was born with. and she also had the same genetic condition that Aaron Carter had, in that she would, upon contact with an open flame, her powers would activate, basically. So that caused a pile of ashes to appear in the area that she disappeared and reappeared up in her teleportation, and so that's why she kind of got the name Phoenix. And when teleporting, her stance and velocity remain the same. So basically, she's gonna be in the same pose as she was when she teleported. So she teleports here, and she's in sort of a kicking stance. When she teleports here, she's going to also be in a kicking stance. And if she jumps here and then flips around here, her velocity is going to remain the same both ways. So yeah, there's a little bit of that. But as I said, she was born with the ability to teleport and the same genetic condition as Aaron Carter. And her parents knew that she would make an extremely strong superhero upon finding out that she had all of these powers. So when she was old enough, her parents signed her up for many different types of martial arts. They prompted her to gain control over her powers so she could kind of master them. And she's a master gymnast, martial artist, and has extremely fast reflexes. And she's able to combine her powers with these and pretty much dominate any fight. And so she's almost always in high spirits, except in combat she becomes a little more serious. But she's when she's in a battle with Aaron Carter, she tends to be a little bit more relaxed during her fights. But she's extremely compassionate and often provides her team members with first aid, as she's one of the only ones that has practiced it. And she's also often underestimated by her foes because she's kind of as I said, she's 5'7", so she's kind of shorter, but she's extremely fast and extremely agile. So definitely don't underestimate her in a fight. And her proficiency in combat is the only reason Aaron Carter survived his second attack from an upgraded Paradox, who we'll get to in a minute, and she was one of the most valuable assets in the battle against the Dark Lord. So very powerful superhero. Alright, so next up we have Timothy Maximoff III, also known as TM. That's his sort of superhero name. His nickname is Tim. He is 19 years old, 6'1", so pretty tall. He's extremely smart, almost superhuman smart level intelligence, and then peak human physiology at his current age, and he has technopath powers, meaning he can basically control any sort of technology, whether what you define as technology, I don't really know. Basically, what I imagine is like anything with like a microchip or something in it. He's able to sort of activate parts of that microchip to do certain things. So like he can have his phone, I guess a good example, he can have his phone and he can be scrolling through his phone without using his hand. That's kind of the best example I can come up with. But yeah, so he's also built himself an Iron Man-like super suit, which honestly, this character was actually not inspired by Iron Man at all. It just kind of happened that I decided to give him a super suit, and then I remembered that Iron Man actually exists, and so yeah, he's not even based off of Iron Man. It's just kind of weird coincidence. But yeah, so let's get into his description. Timothy, or Tim for short, is an incredibly intelligent individual, as I said, probably superhuman level intelligence here. And he was able to use his intelligence to build a super suit. And I actually wrote down here, inspired by Iron Man. I imagine that the Marvel comics still exist in this universe. Sort of like how in Eternals, if you're a fan of Marvel, in the movie Eternals, Phastos' son calls Icarus Superman, meaning that the DC comics, the comics at least, the comic books, are actually exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that's kind of how I imagine this. The Marvel comics are canon, or they actually exist in this universe. So yeah, he was kind of inspired by the Iron Man movies and Iron Man comics to make his suit. And since he was a technopath, he doesn't need any sort of like mind reading or like mind controlled sensors in his suit, so he can spend the most amount of technology giving himself like weapons and protection and things like that, rather than needing to insert all of these sensors to read his mind when he can already control things with his mind anyway. So his latest iteration of the suit, as far as this story goes, is named Porcupine, and it has flight capabilities and energy redirector, which means it's able to channel energy blasts and redirect them, and basically he can blast them out of his own suit. But if they're too powerful, then they could fry the actual blaster in his hand. But as long as they're of decent power level, he can redirect them as much as he wants. So that's on his right arm, and then a long and extremely sharp retractable blade on his left arm, and it can be removed and replaced with an electro baton if he wants to be like non-lethal. And then he has 4 laser beam weapons on his back, 1 on each hand and 1 from the primary sort of suit core. That's not actually the power source, it's just kind of like a design choice, but his suits are mainly meant for practicality rather than, in contrast to Iron Man's, who Tony Stark obviously made his suits very flashy and very sort of, I don't know, sort of very, very, yeah, flashy, I guess is the correct word for that. So in addition, his suit is able to enhance his physical strength and features short burst thrusters on each, on a lot of places. I put down here on each elbow to enhance his punch strength, but he also has some on his knees to enhance his stomping strength, and there's just a lot of them everywhere. But yeah, and his suit can enhance his strength up to about 1 ton, I think I have here, yeah. So yeah, about 1 ton he can lift. And I didn't even tell you Rebecca Davis's super strength. She can lift up to 1.3 tons, so pretty much almost of Matchstick's, the same strength as Matchstick here. But yeah, so next up we have Lucas Robertson, also known as Paradox. So this is Paradox from Matchstick's sort of description here. So he is 20 years old and 6 foot flat. And his powers include teleportation, glitch-like energy blasts, phasing, super strength up to 2.3 tons, and noticeably heightened physical awareness and reflexes. Also superhuman durability. I don't have that written down, but so phasing, if you don't know what that means, basically means that he can make his body non-solid, not in the sense that he turns into a liquid or a gas, but basically he can just walk through walls if he wants to. He can glitch through. It's almost like a video game type thing where he's like where he glitches through walls and things like that. But he is extremely arrogant, extremely self-absorbed, and he was a notorious bully in his early life. And his parents actually left him at the orphanage, and he took out that anger for his parents' departure upon reaching the adequate age on other kids that he met at the orphanage. And once a 10-year-old boy named Aaron Carter arrived at the orphanage, his focus shifted completely towards Carter, relentlessly harassing him because of his dangerous powers and his inability to have saved his family. Carter was harassed in this way for years, even attempting suicide in an attempt to escape the relentlessness of Robertson. And Robertson eventually left the orphanage and pursued an internship at a large medical company, in which an underground operation was also taking place, attempting to synthetically create superhumans. Lucas became the most successful subject of this operation and subsequently wanted to use his newfound abilities to defeat other superhumans. A large criminal organization noticed the recent deaths, the recent rise in deaths of multiple less powerful superheroes, and reached out to Lucas upon finding out that it was him doing that. And they hired him to take out the most powerful superhumans for them. And in combat, he's almost completely silent, adding to his stealthy demeanor. And he has a particular taste for Aaron Carter and is basically trying to hunt him down and find him. And Aaron Carter has become sort of this massive public figure, as he was one of, not the, but one of the first superhumans to be completely open about his having superpowers. Most superhumans at the time didn't really display their superpowers in broad daylight, because as the stereotype goes, you don't want people knowing your secret identity, but Matchstick didn't have the ability to conceal his identity, so he just didn't really care. So Aaron Carter is this massive public figure, and he kind of inspired other superhumans to become very open about their secret identities. But yeah, so Aaron Carter is very, very highly known, as are all the other superheroes, but so now Lucas is after him. Alright, so next up we have Plasma, and Plasma is about 6,000 years old, but that's give or take a few hundred years probably. But he takes the form of an 18 to 20-year-old male. Yeah, he's about 6,000 years old. He's kind of like a Thor sort of situation, except he's a lot older than Thor, and appears a lot younger than Thor. And he's also 6'3". And his powers include, there's a lot of these: energy absorption, lightning blast, flight, super strength up to nearly 30 tons, heightened spatial awareness, meaning he can sort of sense more going on around him, basically. An example of that is when you have somebody standing right behind you and you can kind of feel that they're there even though they're not like physically touching you. That's kind of what he has, but he can sense that from like way farther away. That's basically what I mean by heightened spatial awareness. Phasing, mock teleportation, near lightning fast reflexes, self-replication to an extent, not really, I won't get into that, but ability to open portals to other parts of the universe, and nigh invulnerability. So for his description, Plasma was born in the heart of a thriving star relatively close in space terms, so probably few light years or so away from Earth. Humans had long theorized about a being made of pure energy that could live inside a star. So essentially, humans had kind of figured out what it would take for a being to be able to live inside of a star, and that's the kind of being that Plasma is. So his kind live by feeding off the energy of whatever star they're born in until they feel prepared to leave and explore the universe and find their place among other civilizations. So Plasma waited nearly 6,000 years, as I said, he's 6,000 years old, before leaving his star and made his way to a small planet just outside his solar system. There he met a species of whom he briefly took the form of. The leader of this civilization, named Axon, claimed Plasma would likely have no excitement on his planet, as their species had already fully unified and there was no conflict to be resolved and no sort of adventure, basically. So Axon directed Plasma to a planet his species had visited long ago called Earth, teaching him English and other languages that exist on Earth, like Chinese, Russians, things like that. And sort of taught him all of Earth's culture before before Plasma left. And Plasma then made his way to Earth and created a more permanent form by designing his own human DNA. Around this time, superhumans were beginning to show themselves more, thanks to Aaron Carter. And so that allowed him to fit in with them and even join in on the fight, unknowingly being the most powerful person to ever touch the planet. So in combat, he's almost always laid back and jokes around quite often, as most foes that he faces can't even land a blow on him, and even if they could, they would do pretty much nothing to him. So yeah, there's Plasma's sort of description. Alright, so next up on the list we have Thomas Erickson, also known as Necromancer. He's 23 years old and 5'11", and his powers are magical powers that he can use to enhance his own strength. He can do self-replication, weapon summoning. He can open portals to pretty much wherever he desires. He has a form of echolocation. I wrote down just echolocation. It's not exactly the same thing. And also he has heightened spatial awareness. So Thomas Erickson is known as being extremely friendly and extremely energetic, and he often volunteers for homeless shelters, soup kitchens, just many operations, even when he was really young. But when he was around 15, his eyesight began to fade, and his single mother tried everything outside of risking his well-being to restore his vision, to no avail. Thomas was soon completely blind, but his demeanor never changed. He adapted very well to his perceived disability until one day a man spoke to him as he was walking through the city. The man told him of a thousands-year-old power that was able to grant its users supernatural powers and fix any physical disabilities. Thomas, intrigued, agreed to allow the man to teach him how to use this power. After months of training, Thomas was extremely proficient in using his powers. I just lost my place. Despite his disability still not being fixed. He was also told many things about the universe previously unknown, such as the existence of cosmic beings. You already learned about those. The man then gave Thomas the key to gaining his vision. He must completely forsake himself and basically devote his life to live only for the betterment of others. Thomas immediately agreed to this, obviously, because he's already basically devoted his life to helping others, and he knew that his powers could now help him help other people more than he could even do before he lost his vision. So after saying the vow, a wave of silvery energy shot through his vision, outlining in great detail every object in the room and even the face of the man who had helped him. So basically a silver wave of energy shoots around him that's invisible to everybody else, but he can see it in sort of his eyes, or he can see it in his, like, basically his brain sees it. I'm trying to explain this as best I can. But yeah, so the silver wave of energy, or the silver wave of whatever you want to call it, will outline everything around him, even like in a 360 sort of thing, so he can see everything. Even though his eyes are looking forward, he can see things that are behind him because of this sort of echolocation type thing. And so the wave is fired every time his heart beats, and so basically that gives him more clarity if he's doing any sort of physical activity that increases his heart rate. So in combat, he tries to make peace before engaging, and only goes to combat if he knows peace isn't going to be an option. So yeah, that's Thomas Erickson. One of my favorite superheroes, honestly. He's really cool, but I don't know. So next we have Rhinor, and Rhinor is 60 years old, and that's in Earth years. He's not from Earth, so we don't know exactly how old he is, but he's 10 feet 6 inches tall, and his powers are strength up to 20 tons and extreme durability. So Rhinor is an alien from a planet that is extremely technologically advanced, and despite their brutish appearance, all of them are very brutish looking, as I said, and so that will often make people think that they're, not extremely smart, but they are in fact extremely smart, and his species has achieved near light speed engines, giving them the ability to travel much further than most other species through the cosmos. So Rhinor is one of the few in his species born with supernatural abilities. His species is prone to not have any sort of genetic mishaps upon reproduction, but he's one of the few exceptions to that, and he felt as though he deserved to be the leader of his entire planet because of his physical strength and durability, and that he could basically outcombat anybody on that planet. But he was met with much backlash, as is probably expected for that belief. And so angrily, he decided that instead of facing the numerous obstacles to gaining power on his planet, he would take over a planet inhabited by much weaker creatures. So he stole a ship, flew into the void of space, and most of his life was spent aboard this ship. Eventually, he arrived at a small solar system, and a scan revealed that there was only one planet in this solar system that actually had life on it. So, the species was much more subject to genetic deformities, causing extreme supernatural powers. In that species, they were a lot more prone to having genetic disabilities than he was, or genetic alterations than his species is. So that means that there's a lot more superhumans than his species has. And so basically, he made a plan to basically eliminate every superhuman on this planet, or take out as many as he could to sort of give him the path of least resistance to gaining power on this planet as possible. So he landed on a large continent known as Asia and moved throughout the continent in secret and took out superheroes as he went, basically doing all sorts of research, trying to find out, he would go into hospital records, finding which children were born with genetic deformities that he eventually studied which ones caused certain powers. And so he learned of a child upon his arrival in America. He learned of a child in his current area that had a genetic deformity he recognized from one of his earlier conquests in another country, and he knew that this was going to be a pretty powerful superpower, not the most powerful by any stretch of the word, but he knew that it was pretty strong. So he basically decided, I'm going to need to take this kid out as fast as I can, so that he doesn't try to stop me whenever I'm going on my conquest to conquer this planet. And so he planted a bomb in the building he saw in a building he knew the child would be in later. And many years later, he learned of a female with the same powers, and decided it was worth breaking his cover to confront her, because now there's two of them, because he knew that he didn't kill the first one. So now there's two of these, and so he just decided to break his cover, break his anonymity, only to be thwarted by the first one that he tried to kill. And now that kid has powers, so yeah, big problem for him. So he would eventually be captured, only to be freed later to fight an incredibly powerful entity that endangers Earth as a whole. So pretty interesting, if you ask me. Alright, so next up we have Axon. He's about 30 years old, and again, that's an estimation. His planet doesn't follow Earth years, so there's that. And he's about 7 feet 5 inches tall. So his powers are super strength up to 2 tons, again that's in Earth terms, nearly indestructible armor, energy blasting weapons, and improved reaction time. So the co-leader of his unified planet's military force, Axon is incredibly well liked among his community. His species is known for being extremely intelligent, with an average Earth IQ of 200, and to put that into perspective, the average IQ on Earth is about 100, so pretty much double the average IQ for Earth. So his kind have built a massive network of allies from planets even light years away, and his species has been to many planets they decided allying against with. However, one of these being Earth, and so they basically decided that Earth was not far enough along in their development to be powerful allies. So they just decided to leave Earth alone for a while as a species, let them develop, and then come back, you know, when Earth was a little more developed. So that was Axon's father that did that. He led a small excursion to Earth many years before Axon was born. During this mission, the species had many peaceful interactions with humans and learned many languages of humanity, such as English, Chinese, Japanese, you know, Russian, pretty much every language that there is to know on Earth. And they learned that really quickly, obviously, because they're all extremely smart. And so Axon, upon becoming leader, was taught about Earth and would later teach English to Plasma, becoming friends with him in the process. Axon's closest friend, however, is the last known member of a species that was completely wiped out. Zag, the name given to his friend, was found only a few years after Axon's birth. Axon, by this time, had learned his species' native language, and when his father brought back the young Zag from being rescued by their group, Axon never hesitated to teach him about their culture and language. The two would remain extremely close throughout their entire life, eventually becoming the first co-leaders of their planet's military in several hundred years. And that's years on their planet, not Earth years. As is tradition, they each received an injection of a serum intended to make the leader of the military significantly stronger and faster, and that is their species' belief that the leader of the military needs to be in the front, on the front lines with his men, sort of leading everybody. And so they gave each leader an injection that causes them to have enhanced speed and strength for their species, and so that way they can be up front all the time. So yeah, there's Axon. I really like his character. So next up we have Zag. Zag is about 35 Earth years old, and he is 8 feet 3 inches tall. And the reason they're both so tall is that both of their planets, but specifically Axon's planet, has a lot lower Earth gravity than compared to Earth. So it like sort of stretches them out almost, and so it makes them very tall. So his powers are super strength up to 4 tons per pair of arms, because he does have 2 pairs of arms. Access to energy blasting weapons, improved reaction time, heightened spatial awareness. And so yeah, he's got a few powers, but he's pretty insane, in the best way. So Zag is a member of an alien species whose most notable attributes is their possession of more than 1 pair of hands. So Zag's kind has 4 arms, as well as opposable thumbs on their feet as well. His species was one of the victims of the conquest of the entity known as the Dark Lord. So supposedly the lone survivor, they don't know that for sure, but as far as everyone is concerned, he is the only survivor of the Dark Lord's conquest of his species. Supposedly the lone survivor, the young Zag, was rescued by another species, hoping to make an ally out of his. His species is notably very intelligent, as their brains must be larger and stronger in order to control each of their hands and arms with adequate dexterity. So although due to their unique mouth shape they're unable to speak any language, they use a type of sign language very similar to American Sign Language, because a lot of the things on their planets are on their planet is very similar to stuff on Earth, so their language sort of developed to be very similar to American Sign Language. So Zag was old enough to know his species' traditions as well, such as their love for recreational combat, and Zag had already had around 3.5 Earth years of combat training when his planet was decimated. Upon becoming co-leader with Axon of Axon's species military force, he was given the same serum as Axon, and it actually reacted much more potently with Zag's blood, because his blood is different, and increased his strength a lot more than it was supposed to. So Zag is known for being very calm and less provoked, and has a specific thirst for revenge against the Dark Lord for destroying his species. And when he and Axon were transported to Earth via Plasma's portal, we'll get to that. He almost engaged with the human bystanders due to their physical resemblance of the Dark Lord, until Axon explained that, you know, they're no threat to you, so don't worry about them. Alright, finally we have the big guy, the Dark Lord, the most powerful being in the universe, basically. Yeah, I'll just do the explaining. So he is an unknown amount of years old. Nobody knows how old he is, but he is between 8 feet 10 inches tall and 9 feet 3 inches tall. Again, apologies for not knowing what that is in meters, but I forgot to research it. But he has super strength up to 35 tons, energy blasts, extreme durability, near instantaneous perfect healing as long as he's fully focused on whatever part he's healing. So for example, if he gets his arm cut off, he has to be fully focused on healing his arm to get it to heal extremely quickly. Otherwise it's going to be pretty slow at healing, relatively speaking. But he has flight, teleportation, although his teleportation ability causes or requires a lot of energy to do. Dimensional alteration only at nearly full power, and it takes around 1,000 years for him to do so. Terraforming only in 3 dimensions. He's nearly unkillable. Constant regeneration, self-replication. Other powers may be possible, but he's only appeared at around half of his full power as far as on Earth. So for his description, he's the only known power-based being in the universe, and he is on a constant conquest for becoming more powerful. An unknown amount of time ago, when he was at his full power, he created a full dimension and produced a single living cell which would continue to replicate infinitely. He then allowed himself to regenerate the power he lost for thousands of years, spending the regained energy to create a clone of himself to scout where he should continue his conquest further. The clone eventually found Earth, whose atmosphere acted as a dimensional portal, creating a dimension which the Dark Lord would be more powerful than he had ever been. So he then created another dimension that would act as a trap for any extremely powerful being protecting Earth. And his clone, it accidentally blew its cover on Earth, and so it had a small team of superhumans briefly fought it, and although it managed to escape, the damage was done, and the superhumans were now on the hunt for him. He set up a trap with his dimension that he created, and basically left his clone there to be killed. And after a long battle, leaving 3 of the 6 heroes that entered near death, one of them, Aaron Carter, was permanently affected in that his ACL was torn, and your ACL is a very, very thick ligament in your knee, and that basically aids in your knee's ability to bend, and without it, it's very, very hard, or it's really, really important, and when you tear it, it's like a 6-month healing process, so yeah, it's pretty important. But his ACL was torn, and the knuckles in his left hand were shattered, forcing him to wear bandages on his left hand and knee from then on. So the Dark Lord waited a couple more years before showing himself again, and the team of heroes had learned from Thomas Erickson that he was now equipped with an army created from the single cell he produced however many years before. So he was waiting for them to make their stand before he conquered Earth, because he wanted to see what kind of protection Earth's humans would be willing to give for their planet, basically. And so so the team gathered as many superhuman volunteers as they could from as many different countries as they could, and they also joined forces with Axon and Zag, and Axon and Zag brought their army to the Dark Lord's dimension, and although the resulting battle left many dead at the hands of the Dark Lord, as well as leaving plasma corrupted with the energy of the dimension and forced to feed from the sun for a time in order to cleanse the corrupted energy, they were able to eliminate every creature in the Dark Lord's army and left him trapped in his own dimension at nearly human level strength. Although it would take more energy than exists in the Milky Way galaxy to fully kill him, it would take hundreds of thousands of years for his strength to return. So the Dark Lord is absolutely insane. But yeah, he's the last character on this list. So without further ado, let's get into the storyline. Okay, so here we have the storyline. Now there are sort of 4 separate arcs here, and so it's like 4 separate stories basically. So I imagine each of these like being their own movie almost. If they were in like a movie sort of thing, each of these would be their own sort of separate movie, and you know, whatever. So the story begins when a bomb explodes in a small family fun center in a sort of medium-sized city, and it basically killed an entire family, and one child who was later identified as 10-year-old Aaron Carter was one of the few survivors despite his extremely close proximity to the bomb. So his entire family was killed in the bombing, leaving him orphaned, and upon being transferred to an orphanage in his city, he discovered that he now had superpowers. When his hands burst into flames, he immediately began to cry and panic due to his newfound PTSD and pyrophobia from the explosion. He was bullied at the orphanage by a child named Lucas Robertson, and many believe that and made to believe that he could have stopped the bomb since he had supernatural powers. At the age of 15, Aaron left the orphanage, having had enough of the constant berating he was receiving. He began working for a wealthy elderly woman who took note of his situation and paid him much more than what he should have been being paid, so that he could afford an apartment and food, and have a little bit left over for, you know, some commodities, like, you know, he got himself a phone, stuff like that. One day, on his way to get his monthly cup of coffee, he allotted himself one day a month to get a cup of coffee. He noticed a multitude of overturned police cars on the way to the coffee shop. And then, in the middle of the street, a 10-foot tall rhino-like bipedal alien, or monster, or whatever you wanted to call it, surrounded by a crowd of people. The alien was speaking English and yelling for someone named Rebecca Davis. Before the creature could attack the crowd out of frustration, Aaron intervened by throwing a concrete parking stopper at him. Which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically those little, like, those massive concrete blocks that are like in front of parking spots a lot of the time in parking lots and stuff, to kind of like show where you need to stop to not go into the next parking spot or like into the grass or something like that. But yeah, so he threw one of those concrete parking stoppers at him, and the alien paused and seemed to recognize Aaron before attacking him. The two engaged in a short battle before Aaron was able to lift a car, something that he didn't even know he could do, and threw it at the monster. So the monster retreated to regroup upon realizing that, wow, this guy is a lot stronger than I thought he would be. And so Aaron collapsed in the middle of the road exhausted, which he wasn't in any danger of being run over or anything, because the overturned police cars were already blocking the road. While he lay in the road catching his breath, a redheaded attractive girl around his age approached him and offered him help up. He eventually accepted her hand after kind of being stunned a little bit that somebody was actually offering to help him, and the two went for a cup of coffee. So during the conversation, Aaron noticed that her eyes matched his, bright yellow-orange that seemed to be linked to his powers. She introduced herself as Rebecca Davis, the one that the massive creature was looking for, and that she had very similar abilities to Aaron. So she stated that she did not intervene with the alien because her parents warned her of the dangers of displaying her powers in public. Upon their departure, Rebecca told Aaron where she lived and offered for him to stop by any time. And later in the week, Aaron was being noticed quite often for his public display of powers and was even shown on the news fighting the creature, although the news couldn't find him to get an interview with him. People got like videos of him fighting this rhino-like monster, and obviously they saw his face in there, so in that video, so that's where he was being recognized from. He was, let's see, upon arriving to the elderly woman that he worked for's house, she told him that he now had a bank account that would have enough money for whatever he wanted. And after he initially declined this, saying this is not what I wanted, She told him that he needed to be out in the city helping more people than just her, and to consider the money that she gave him a payment in advance for all he would do for the people in the city. Upon arriving back in his apartment to clean it out and move to a nicer one, now that he could actually afford it, let's see, where am I at? The news showed the massive rhino alien that he fought about a week before, making its way through the suburbs near Rebecca's house. Aaron immediately dropped the remote and sprinted out the door, and as the remote hit the floor, the channel changed to show that a terrible storm was making its way to the city. So as Aaron sprinted through the city at like 40 miles per hour, a small child yelled, "Look, it's the matchstick." And he kind of heard that and kind of kept note of that in his mind. But he arrived at the field near the suburbs just in time to see Rebecca arguing with her parents outside about fighting the beast. Aaron quickly introduced himself to her parents before making his way up to the alien. The two exchanged words where the creature identified himself as Rhinor and the one that planted the bomb 5 years earlier. The two began fighting, and Aaron used his fire abilities, more empowered by the presence of Rebecca and the fury that he felt towards Rhinor. As it began to rain, Aaron was unable to continue using his fire and was struck by lightning while in mid-air, meaning that the electricity actually stayed in his body for a lot longer than it would have if he was touching the ground. So Rhinor then berated him for being weak until Rebecca attacked him, getting several powerful blows in, but once Rhinor knocked her down the first time, before she could even get up, Rebecca's father opened fire with his gun, whose bullets merely bounced off Rhinor's thick skin. Before he could attack Rebecca's father, Aaron stepped in with his hands flaming once again, evaporating the rain instantly before they could even touch his actual skin. He proceeded to deliver an absolute beatdown on Rhinor, with his power seemingly heightened by the lightning. Eventually, he managed to knock Rhinor out, where he was then taken into custody in a maximum security prison. Aaron was then invited by Rebecca's parents into their home for some food and first aid. And Aaron and Rebecca officially began their relationship. Aww. So, yeah, that is the first part of this storyline. I honestly really like that story, and you know, I don't know, I just really like it. I think it's really cool, but you know, that's just my opinion. But yeah, let's get on to the second one. So fast forwarding about 2 years, the team of superhumans called the Recruits had been created, and Rebecca, Aaron, Timothy Maximoff III, and a being known as Plasma were a part of it. So the Recruits basically was created after Matchstick Aaron Carter displayed his abilities publicly, and all the superhumans were like, oh wow, this is actually like this, he didn't have any sort of negative repercussions for this, so they began to all show themselves more willingly in public. And so early one morning, an entity was seen all across the globe and fighting superhero teams from different countries, leaving none dead but defeating them all. Upon its arrival to the US, the Recruits were prepared along with the police to fight it. It was so dark green it was almost completely black, very tall and resembled a human bodybuilder with a cape and a hood. The team fought it, but after it used a terraformed piece of earth, I can't speak, I'm sorry, a terraformed piece of earth to stab Plasma, something that had never been done before, the group was forced to retreat. They decided to consult Rhinor, whom none of them had seen in years, and it was decided that Aaron would be the one to speak to him. Rhinor agreed to help them stop this entity if he was allowed freedom upon their victory, to which the police reluctantly agreed. So Rhinor then brought them to meet a man known as Thomas Erickson, the only other superhuman Rhinor had information on at the time. So Thomas agreed eagerly to help the team, and upon hearing the description of the being, immediately recognized this description as being the entity known as the Dark Lord, although all ancient records describe it as being a dark purple rather than a dark green. So the team go to Plasma in the hospital where he's sort of healing from his stab wound, and basically tell their plan, or tell Plasma their plan, and that he needs to stay in the hospital to heal. He doesn't need to go with them. So Plasma protests, but eventually he just accepts it and allows them to leave. And Thomas creates a portal to a dimension which he could sense a massive energy presence in. And as the team enter the dream world, as the dimension's called, they find the Dark Lord sort of meditating there almost. So the recruits immediately attack, and the Dark Lord is fending all of them off with relative ease. After nearly an hour of battle, all 5 of the recruits are on the ground, with Aaron in the worst condition. The Dark Lord had broken his right arm and torn his left ACL, leaving him unable to move without severe pain. Aaron forced himself up, and although he could feel that the knuckles in his left hand were severely damaged due to punching so much, he went at the Dark Lord again, only to be knocked down and knocked down once more. So just as the Dark Lord was about to kill them, a crackling sound came from above, and plasma blast through an electrical portal in the ceiling, and the two battle. Plasma and the Dark Lord battle, with Plasma having the upper hand from all the damage the Dark Lord had taken previously. The rest of the team joins, including Rhinor, and defeat the Dark Lord. Aaron collapses to the ground, and the team rushes to the hospital, where he's left in a coma for 2 weeks. He wakes up, and basically the nurse tells him that now he's gonna have to wrap his fist, wrap his knuckles up, and wrap his knee up to sort of stabilize them in order to make sure that they don't have any sort of severe damage done to them once again. So yeah, that's the first instance of the Dark Lord attacking Earth. As I said, the clone basically blew his cover pretty bad, and so that's how he was able to be defeated the first time. So yeah, let's get on to the third part of the story. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So about a year after that, Thomas senses an imbalance in the energy of the universe. Upon meditating to find the source of this imbalance, he comes to discover that it's once again the Dark Lord. Great, he's back. But this time he's much stronger. So he assembles the team, the recruits, which Rhinor is now left to be on his own, and tells them the situation. The team wastes no time in gathering more people to help, but upon the realization that the Dark Lord now has an army, the team decides that they need more help. So Plasma knows just where to get that help, and brings 2 aliens back to Earth through a portal, which he's now mastered how to make. And these aliens are named Axon and Zag. Zag, whose entire species was killed off by the Dark Lord, noticed the similarities between him and humans and attempted to attack them before being stopped by Axon. They eventually agree to call their army to prepare for transport to Earth via Plasma portals, and Plasma travels all across the globe to call other superhero teams to the cause. In 7 days, the battle will begin. In the meantime, Axon and Zag stay in the housing provided by the police station, and Rebecca also notices that she's able to slightly understand and communicate with Zag, as he speaks a form of sign language that's very similar to American Sign Language, as I said earlier, and Rebecca is able to speak American Sign Language, so she's kind of able to, barely converse with him. So upon the day of the battle, many countries worth of superheroes are gathered in the city and are each given an earpiece made by Tim that will translate all Earth languages to the selected language. Axon and Zag go with Plasma to retrieve the army, and the entire group goes into a portal created by Thomas, linked to the Earth portal in the Dark Lord's true dimension, also known as the Inverse. So upon entering, the Dark Lord is in his normal purple color and reveals that the version of him from a year prior was a clone he created to scout the universe that foolishly blew his cover on Earth. So Plasma goes back to Earth and flies to the sun, needing to recharge himself a little bit before the battle, just to make sure he's got plenty of power to fight the Dark Lord with. So the Dark Lord, the battle commences without him, and Thomas immediately plays support by creating a magical shield protecting the Earth portal. The Dark Lord remains flying high above the battle, waiting to see how his army of duplicates, as they're called, will fare against the heroes. And the duplicates quickly seem to be losing, and the Dark Lord joins the fight. The heroes agree to only, Aaron Carter basically tells them that if they're alone, they need to spend as little time fighting the Dark Lord as possible, without another person helping them, because he's so powerful he could just easily kill one of them easily. So, with the Dark Lord joining the fight, the heroes, as I said, the heroes agree to spend only a short time fighting the Dark Lord, and he pushes through the leagues of Axon's army and heroes before being stopped by Zag. The two battle with Zag being on top for most of the fight, even ripping the Dark Lord's arms off, or limbs off and beating him with them. The Dark Lord regenerates and eventually gains the upper hand before being attacked from the back by Axon. The Dark Lord retreats and pushes toward the portal, breaking through the shield, and Thomas then battles him alone, creating magical soldiers that deal significant damage to the Dark Lord before the Dark Lord eventually traps Thomas behind his own shield. Before he can kill Thomas, a blast of electricity sends the Dark Lord back through the barrier and into the sky. 6 humanoid lightning men then attack the Dark Lord in the air before knocking him to the ground. Plasma then reveals himself, and he and the Dark Lord fly off in an epic battle. As they leave, the duplicate brutes begin to push through the front lines, and two begin to make their way to Aaron. He calls for help, and Rebecca comes to aid him before a massive figure lands between them and the brutes. The massive figure is Rhinor, and who found out about the battle and quickly made his way to the city and found the portal. Rhinor then helps the heroes in the battle, and the Dark Lord makes his way from the edge, a place in the inverse that is on the line of existing and not existing, which Plasma has sort of brought him to kind of limit his powers and keep him there for as long as possible. But the Dark Lord makes his way back from there, and he and Rhinor then meet once again, and having a short battle before Rhinor realizes he's too powerful at this point in the battle. He knows that it will take a significant amount of power to kill him due to his significant durability. And so he basically tells Aaron this plan that he's going to allow the Dark Lord to kill him in exchange for the Dark Lord wasting a whole ton of his energy to do so. And so Aaron protests, sort of having befriended Rhinor over time. But let's see, where am I at? But Rhinor has basically committed himself to doing this, basically saying that he has saying something like he's killed a lot more families than just Aaron's, and he basically deserves what he's about to get. And so he. Let's see. Plasma makes his way back after and teams up with Tim to capture a powerful energy blast from the Dark Lord. So yeah, by this point, Rhinor has already died from the Dark Lord's energy blast, and the Dark Lord sacrificed a lot of his energy to do that. But yeah, Rhinor is now dead. So Plasma teams up with Tim to capture a powerful energy blast from the Dark Lord and send it into Plasma, who has now discovered his full capabilities with his energy absorption power, and he basically contains the blast from the Dark Lord, which is so powerful that he can barely do so until he's high in the air with the Dark Lord and then just explodes. So barely alive, Plasma and the Dark Lord land on the ground, and the Dark Lord gets up only to be attacked by Aaron, Rebecca, and Tim. The trio do severe damage to him before being knocked back down, and before he can kill them, Plasma reappears behind him, surging with the red violent energy gained from absorbing a section of the inverse, something that Thomas had already warned him not to do, but he decided that this situation was way too dire to not do this. And so this put him in a significantly higher power level than the now extremely weak Dark Lord, but corrupted him into being extremely aggressive. He holds the Dark Lord down and tells the remaining army and heroes to leave, intent on trapping himself and the Dark Lord in the inverse. As he closes the portal, though, he manages to slip through at the last second, leaving the Dark Lord alone in the inverse with nothing to kill to regain any power. And Plasma then says a temporary goodbye to the team and flies off into the sun to purify himself from the disgusting red energy that he had just absorbed from the Dark Lord's inverse. And there you have it. That is that is probably one of my favorites of the 4 sort of sub storylines that I've got. I just really like the whole battle aspect of it. But the 4th and final story arc that I have here is the one now featuring Paradox. And so without further ado, I think we just go ahead and get into that. Okay, my throat's kind of hurting a little bit from all of this talking, but yeah, I really enjoy talking about this. So let's get on to the final storyline, or the final piece of the storyline so far. So another year after the full battle for Earth against the Dark Lord, Aaron is ambushed by a bomb in the street in front of the same coffee shop he fought Reinor nearly 3 years prior. So he was sent through the glass window in the front of the shop, lacerating his back, and the bomb actually blew his shirt off, which his shirt and shorts had actually been purposefully constructed to be fireproof so that he wouldn't actually burn through any more shirts, which Tim had actually done that for him. He made them out of like Kevlar or something, something that's really, really fireproof. So his shirt is blown off by this bomb. Luckily, he keeps his shorts on. But he then has a battle with 5 men armed with rifles and wearing bulletproof vests with some sort of logo on the little corner. So Aaron eventually managed to take them all down and is sort of like questioning why this is happening. But then he's attacked from behind. He turns around to see a figure dressed in all dark clothes and a mask. The man phased through many of Aaron's punches and teleported around him while delivering much stronger punches. Eventually, Rebecca and Tim arrived. Aaron, while he was walking to the coffee shop, was on the phone with Tim, and upon Tim's hearing Aaron scream, "Everybody get down," and jumping on top of the bomb, or hearing an explosion from Aaron jumping on top of the bomb before his phone going dead, kind of worried him a little bit. So Rebecca and Tim eventually arrive and notice that Aaron was in trouble, and so they sort of give Aaron enough time or they basically buy Aaron some time to sort of get to his feet, and the man eventually realizes that he's outnumbered and retreats. So as Rebecca was helping Aaron stitch the wounds on his back that he'd gotten from the glass, he explained that he managed to get a small amount of blood from the man that he had given to Tim for DNA testing, as well as a logo from the vest of one of the armed men. So Tim calls him in for results and begins with explaining that the logo belongs to a large criminal organization. He then says that the man Aaron fought was a man named Lucas Robertson, based off of the DNA sample. Upon hearing that name, Aaron fell into a panic attack, and so Rebecca had to actually help him sort of focus, breathe, calm down, because that was very traumatic for Aaron to hear. But he says that the man, so Aaron then explains his relationship to Lucas, sort of what all Lucas caused, what all trauma Lucas caused in Aaron. So they're a little surprised that this, like, how did this happen? But about a week later, Aaron was planning on meeting Rebecca to watch a movie, but as he waited for her to arrive, he was ambushed again, this time by the person who they now know as Lucas, sort of turning the lights off and forcing Aaron to go around looking for almost a Scooby-Doo sort of hunt, before eventually revealing himself and then just like destroying or just attacking Aaron in full force. So although Aaron was actually able to like hold his own for quite a while, he ended up being overpowered by Lucas's vastly superior powers, and Lucas actually managed to break Aaron's ribs and break his nose, and At that point, Aaron was just on the ground, and before he could deliver the killing blow, he was interrupted by Rebecca, who swooped in and knocked Lucas to the ground and knocked him back with several extremely strong punches and kicks, using her teleportation to make her next blow completely unpredictable for Lucas. And while Lucas was knocked back, Rebecca helped Aaron up before Lucas actually came back and sent a returning blow to Rebecca, breaking her nose in the first blow. So she kind of fell to the ground, but was about to get back up, but Aaron retaliated and ended up receiving another barrage of punches to his ribs. So yeah, not a very good situation. Weeks later, Aaron, Rebecca, and Tim, Aaron's ribs have healed by this point, but they have planned an infiltration on the building that Tim has discovered the criminal organization Lucas operates with, works out of. So it's a very tall building. It's got an elevator in there, but it's sort of like it's been under construction for quite a while, and that's actually the building that this criminal organization runs out of. This sort of unfinished looking building, but it's actually pretty much completely finished, aside from like paint and stuff like that. So they've sort of figured out this plan for infiltrating this and sort of getting the information and getting out as fast as they can. So they've mapped out the entire building, figured out what stuff is on what floor, and so they have each been designated to a floor. So Aaron is supposed to go to the supply floor and destroy as much of their supplies as they can, to sort of like, get rid of their bullets, get rid of their guns, whatever. And so he's supposed to sort of, do that. Tim is supposed to go to the server room where they have a bunch of computers and basically gather as much information about their organization as he can that he will then present to the police, for them to take care of stuff. And then Rebecca will go to the top floor where the boss resides, or where the boss is sort of at, and interrogate him and basically try to get some verbal information from him, and she'll have like a recording device on her somewhere, so that she can get a recording of him saying certain things. While the group is in the elevator, Aaron is clearly panicked and sort of like extremely nervous, because he knows for a fact that Lucas is going to be there and Lucas is going to try to stop them, and he's absolutely terrified of Lucas by this point, not just because of the psychological damage anymore, but because of the physical damage that Lucas can deliver. And upon their elevator ride to the top floor, or to the supply floor, the elevator stops in a place on a floor that they didn't select, and the doors open, and lo and behold, Lucas is there. And so Aaron eventually volunteers himself to fight while the other two continue on, and so the two begin their fight as soon as the door closes. So Rebecca and Tim eventually arrive at the server room. Tim gets out and wishes Rebecca luck, and the server room is strangely unguarded, but he eventually gets into a little bit of a fight after a little while. But he doesn't have his suit because he's trying to be inconspicuous, but he does have a couple of arm gauntlets for different weapons that he just has, and he's wearing a hoodie over them, so they're not sort of displayed out. But Rebecca is on her way up to the top floor. The boss knows that they're up there because Lucas alerted him, and so he knows that she's coming, and so he has his guards on the top floor direct all of their guns toward the elevator, but when the elevator opens, no one's there. And so they're all a little bit confused before Rebecca teleports behind the boss and 1-inch punches his head into the desk and basically gives him an instantaneous concussion, So now she's fighting the guards because they've now figured out what's going on, and she dispatches of them pretty quickly. She doesn't kill any of them, but she knocks them out. And so now she proceeds to question the now disoriented boss, who doesn't really have his sense of judgment anymore because of his extreme concussion. But now, so now Aaron has almost defeated Lucas. He's like so filled with rage that he's just absolutely beating the snot out of Lucas. And but then Lucas eventually teleports away after receiving a distress message from his boss before he was then concussed by Rebecca. So his mask was actually broken. His jacket was ripped off. So when he gets to the top floor, Tim is also there now, and Tim basically makes the remark that Aaron really did some serious damage to him. But the elevator, before Lucas is able to attack Rebecca and Tim, or he actually engages in a short fight with them, but they're interrupted when the elevator dings and Lucas turns around knowing that Aaron's going to be there, and he makes his way right in front of the elevator so that when the doors open, he can just immediately attack. But when the doors open, no one's there. And so he's a little bit confused and he kind of stands there for a second before the fire escape door flies off its hinges and slams Lucas into the opposite wall. And Aaron runs from the fire escape door that he just kicked off its hinges and basically delivers another beatdown on Lucas. And Lucas tries to fight back, but Aaron just has beaten him so badly that he's just, he's got no chance of winning at this point. And Aaron then throws him out the top story window behind the boss, and that basically almost concludes the fight, or supposedly concludes the fight. But Aaron is clearly not done yet. He's keeps a completely straight face, and as the boss is finally sort of coming to his senses a little bit more, he grabs the boss and throws him on the ground, tells Tim to watch him, make sure he doesn't go anywhere, and goes down the elevator to quote finish the fight. And so he walks out of the front of the building and sees Lucas sort of limping away, having definitely broken some bones from that fall. And so he goes and just again delivers another beat down on Lucas, and eventually sends him crumpled against the concrete side of a building. Aaron is now in tears and is sort of imagining or preparing to basically kill Lucas for all of the psychological and physical trauma he's caused to Aaron. So Aaron prepares to deal the killing blow before being stopped by Rebecca. The two of them just kind of exchange glances before Aaron backs down. And so he stands back up and begins to just verbally destroy Lucas for what he's done to Aaron psychologically. And he actually reveals for the first time his suicide attempt that he couldn't complete because of his superpowers. And so Rebecca is now completely shocked by this, and just goes and basically hugs Aaron, and he just kind of quiets down and just breaks down, breaks down. And so the two stand there just embracing while the police arrive and arrest Lucas and put him in detainment. So, and that is the conclusion of the Paradox arc. The Paradox arc is honestly my favorite of all of them because of all of the, it draws from all of the stories before to sort of create this, to sort of put into this. And so that's kind of the ending. I guess if this were one massive book, this would be sort of the ending of, like, you know, I don't know, if this were like some sort of massive book series, this would be like, you know, the first sort of section of the book series, and then there would be like another section, sort of like Harry Potter, how there's like, you know, the section where they're just kind of kids learning about magic, and then the more serious part, which is like the last 4 movies, I don't know. But that's where they're sort of trying to actually defeat Voldemort and stuff. So that's kind of how I imagine this. This is sort of the first few books of Harry Potter where it's, you know, less serious, but then by the end it starts getting like more serious, and then there's the next set of books that's, you know, different. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this, because I really enjoyed creating it, and I'm not even close to done yet. I'm still coming up with ideas every day, and I'm trying to find a good way to make a new story out of it. And so yeah, I'll be sure to, now that you guys kind of know the base storyline up to this point, you can kind of more easily follow along with my actual storyline. So yeah, that's actually awesome for me to kind of have this responsibility taken off of my shoulders, because I've been kicking myself for not recording this video sooner. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this storyline. Let me know what you thought about it. I'll be sure to use the chapters, the YouTube chapters feature, so you can kind of skip around if you want to. But yeah, with that is the AaronDoesArt creative universe. Again, credit to that name goes to White for McGuire. And with that, I will be out of here. So subscribe if you haven't, leave a like on the video if you liked it, a dislike if you didn't, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.